We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
You are listening to The Underground Marketing Conspiracy, a secret ritual where entrepreneurs acquire highly classified and confidential business knowledge that the top 1% of income earners don't want you to know. And now, your host, Matty Milligan.
What is going on, my fellow conspirator, and of course, my conspirators? Welcome to The Underground Marketing Conspiracy. Woo! In this Facebook group I'm in, someone asked, if you could meet anyone successful, and you could sit down with them for a couple of hours and pick their brain, who would it be? And all sorts of people. I'm sure they would look at all the very successful people in the world right now, probably Elon Musk, maybe Gary Vaynerchuk, maybe Grant Cardone, maybe Mark Zuckerberg, really any sort of, I guess, social media influencer and entrepreneur who is very popular in this space right now. But I had a very different and esoteric answer to this question. So the person I chose was actually George Carlin, and I'm going to tell you why. So let's back up a little bit to 2001. In 2001, my father passed away, and I was 15 years old, and he had colon cancer for a few years, and he passed away. I'm not going to go into that because I'm sure I'll cry and blubber about it, but just know that about me. So this was a very low point in my life. After he passed away, I was at a point where I actually didn't have any friends. I was overweight, super depressed. I wasn't depressed necessarily. I wouldn't say I was depressed. I'd say I was numb, and I was just in this state of utter apathy every single day for a few months. And all I would do is I would wake up and play NHL 2001, my favorite video game of all time. All the new ones, I don't like them because they're too realistic. I like that game because it was very unrealistic, and that's what made it so much fun. And so, this is funny. I was actually in 3 different leagues to play that game. And there was a point when I was number 1 on all of those different ladders. I think there was the actual official EA Sports one. And then I think there was this one called Guru's Scoring Ladder. And then there was another one called EA Wizards Ladder. So on all 3 of these, I was number 1 in the entire world simultaneously. I don't play video games at all, as I've talked about before. I haven't played them much. I'll play a little bit sometimes around Christmas, but this past year I didn't. I was just too busy, and I'm too motivated on other things, and my business and all the other little things I'm trying to build right now have really become video games, and ClickFunnels for me is just my new video game. Anyways, so there I am back in 2001 just playing this, and what made it even worse was at one point the Leafs get into the playoffs. I think they were dead last that year from what I remember, and they're facing Ottawa, who was first. And believe it or not, the Leafs just swept Ottawa. It was ridiculous. Sundin stepped up his game. Matt Sundin, if you don't know anything about hockey and the Toronto Maple Leafs. My favorite player of all time, this dude from Sweden. Super awesome dude. Very charitable. Always helped out with all sorts of things in Toronto. Great attitude. Awesome dude. I went and saw this in the fall, actually. It was this Hockey Hall of Fame inductees game where it was Sundin's team versus this guy Nick Lidstrom team, who was the captain of the Detroit Red Wings, and Sundin had this smile on his game the whole time. He was having such a great time. He scored, I think, 3 goals, and then he had this crazy shootout goal where he just came in and kicked his stick and it went in. And the goaltending, I'll be honest, they're told to be soft on purpose to let in some sweet goals. But so there I am. I think it was April or May. It was probably May at this point of 2001. And again, there I am. My father's just passed away. I'd been skipping so much school at that point, and I was failing every single course in school. I was going in 8 courses, failing all of them. And again, I really didn't care. I was in this state of apathy and just this state of numbness. And then the Leafs faced New Jersey, so the New Jersey Devils, and it went to 7 games, and they lost. And I was in a state of apathy, so I'm like, whatever. And then after that game, I went and turned on HBO, and I started flipping, or it's the movie network, which is Crave TV now. And I'm watching this, and I'm going through, and sure enough, this dude comes on. I'm like, I've heard of this guy, George Carlin. Okay. Let me see his stand-up. And I'd seen some of his stuff before. I think I'd seen him in some other smaller roles in other movies, and I'd seen him and I was like, oh, this guy, like everyone talks about how great a stand-up comedian is. And I listened to this special, and I think it was called Complaints and Grievances, and I hadn't laughed that hard in so long. It had been like, I don't think I've ever laughed that hard my entire life at that point. I was dying. I was just busting a gut. And this dude just has such a good way of really juxtaposing brilliant, intelligent, well thought out, well rehearsed material and ideas versus stupid fart jokes. And I always just loved that about him, and I always respected that so hard. And his other stuff, as he got older, it just was better and better and better. His other stand-up ones, Life is Worth Losing, and then his last one before he passed away, It's Bad for You. Some of the jokes in there are just so ridiculous. And he would always touch on all sorts of political things. He would touch on social issues, all sorts of different things that were happening in the world. And he was in the middle like me. Like, he wasn't necessarily conservative or liberal or Republican or Democrat, wherever you are, but he just didn't care, right? And he talks about that. He's like, yeah, I just, at some point, I've seen an interview with him where he's like, yeah, at some point, you just have to stop caring completely, right? If you believe, I was like, I'm going to die someday, and I can pretty much do whatever I want. You have to have fun with your life, right? And he's like, once you stop caring, life just is so much better. And when George Carlin passed away in 2008, man, that hit me hard. Like, I was so upset. Like, I just heard about his new stand-up, and I hadn't watched it yet, and he passed away, and it just put me into this state again of, like, at that point, it was depression, which I'd say depression is like a step up on the emotion scale from apathy. And from there, that's one of the moments in my life when I realized I had to change. But I'll talk about that in a different episode. What I really want to talk about is what you can learn from stand-up comedians. So when I was at Funnel Hacking Live last year, Dean Graziosi talked about what stand-up comedians do to come up with their best material. So they'll go on the road for 3 to 6 months, even a year in some cases, like Carlin did. And they'll have like a list of jokes, right? They're like, okay, I'll write down 10 different jokes. And they'll go out to these smaller clubs and they'll pitch them. And most of them will bomb. Most of them will get like, not bomb, but a few of them will bomb. The majority of them will get like a decent laugh. But then there'll be those 1 or 2 where people they bust a gut. They're like, oh man, that was like a really well thought out joke. And so these stand-up comedians, they go and they do that over and over and over again. And they keep going to these different places, right? So they go to all sorts of different clubs, and they test it out throughout the country too. So they're traveling around, testing out all these different things. I think because of political correctness, you can't say a lot of these jokes these days, which kind of sucks. Because I've seen what's happened to comedy over the last few years, and it's a shame because I really believe in free speech, and I think you can say whatever you want. And it's weird. There was this thing in Canada recently too, where this gentleman in Quebec, I don't know his name, but I heard he said some joke, offended someone, and they went to the government, and then this guy it was either he was sued or he had to pay some sort of fine where it was like $40,000 or $50,000. And I thought that was utterly ridiculous. Like, you should be able to really just say whatever you want, right? Even if it's very offensive to other people. If you don't like what you're listening to, change the channel or leave, right? I whenever I see Keeping Up with the Kardashians come on, I get triggered. People probably hear that, they're like, what, dude? But I get triggered. I'm like, oh, I just despise them. Like, bro, like I like Kanye. Like, Kanye is I think he's hilarious. I don't know much about his music. I just like to see him get interviewed because he's funny and he has original ideas, and he has a very cool ethos in the way that he lives his life, and really just some great ideas. So anyways, back to Carlin. Or back to, I guess, how these guys write their jokes, right? So Carlin, for example, he would travel on the road, and he would basically find those 20 jokes that were the best. And then you work on them, right? Gradually over and over and over again, and you refine it. You realize, you test out different things, like the timing of the joke and really just the different words and how you approach it, the different things you can do with the microphone when you're pitching that joke. And then you find all those best ones, you put it into it, and that becomes your HBO special, right? And that's what Carlin did, right? So when I see people out there, they're like, oh, I'm going to make like a webinar, right? It's the same thing with your webinar. When you're creating a webinar or a sales letter, especially if you're doing it live, like I do recommend doing with this strategy, I'll talk about another one that I talked to this dude yesterday in New Zealand about, and he was like, his mind was blown. And it was something that sold me recently on something, and I saw it done about a year ago. I'm like, okay, this is the future of how things are going to be sold. But you have to practice over and over and over again, right? Like, you might not know what your audience's objections are. You might not know what's going to hit with them, what's going to resonate with them the most. That's going to get them emotionally compelled to take action and buy your stuff. So that's really what I would recommend doing. Again, if you're thinking about doing a webinar, you have to start practicing over and over and over again, right? Like Carlin. And again, I've heard some of the things where he was practicing for his last show, Life is Worth Losing. Or no, it was It's Gotta Be Bad for You. So basically with that one, you would hear him on the road and people would record it, and I would hear the jokes and I'd be like, oh, it wasn't the same one as the final one that he did, and it wasn't as good. And then when you hear the final one, you're like, oh man, it's just so polished and professional, and it just works so much better. But again, you're not going to find that out unless you're actually pitching over and over and over again, right? If you're not making those offers to people on a regular basis, seeing what their objections are to that offer, finding out what their false beliefs are, finding out why they're not buying, then you're never going to determine that, right? So if you're thinking about doing a webinar, if you're thinking about pitching from stage, like any sort of platform closing, like I would really use that strategy where, again, you're just putting out content, seeing what resonates, seeing what gets the best engagement. You're going to find those one or two posts that really resonate with people. And then again, add that into your webinar, right? Same thing when you're creating content and you want to run ads on Facebook or YouTube if their video view is ads. Go out and create a bunch of videos first and just post them organically. And then you're going to notice that one or two of them really resonate with people. Like most of them are going to bomb. Maybe you'll get some average ones. And then one of them, you're going to be like, whoa, people really like this video. And at that point, it's like, all right, now I know what my ad is. All I need to do is take this identical video and put some money into it, boost it, and show it to as many people as possible. And that's really what you can learn from stand-up comedy. And my boy, George Carlin, rest in peace. Love to have a coffee with him in heaven someday. Hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Underground Marketing Conspiracy. If you did, I want you to consider subscribing, maybe even go back and listening to some additional episodes, sharing this with a friend, also leaving a review on iTunes. That would be greatly appreciated. My name is Matty Milligan. You can find out more about me if you visit mattymilligan.com. I'll see you next time on another episode of the Underground Marketing Conspiracy. Woo!